Assalamualaikum. Okay, hold on, let me. Assalamualaikum, everybody. My name is Lubna Ali, and I am a licensed marriage and family therapist here in Austin. I see individuals, couples, and families working in private practice. So I'm excited to be here.
Thank you, Lubna. I really appreciate your time and your generosity towards this. And I know you're really very experienced. You, mashallah, have a lot of experience, and I'm hoping this will be an ongoing thing for us with having you here. I'll let you continue, and then once you're done, we'll kind of at the end. And if there are questions, I'll bother you with those questions at the end.
Sure. Okay. So today I thought a good topic would be how to go over tips that you guys can all use just to be mindful of, thinking of like, okay, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses on how happy couples argue effectively? In my practice and even in my personal life, I see how so many couples, they really struggle with how they handle conflict. And I will say the success of a relationship, it's not how great things are when things are going so well. Anybody can have fun together, but it's during the hard times. How are you guys handling that? So I want to just give you some tips in my work, just things that I've realized of how couples can do a better job at handling conflict. So, I think as you listen, I really would encourage you to reflect on, oh, this is a strength of mine, or this is a weakness of mine, or this is what my partner struggles with. This is what I think they're actually good at. So I'm just going to go over them, and then at the end we'll have some questions and answers if you guys want clarification on any of these things. So the first one is to stop fighting, stop saying you. This leads to your partner feeling attacked. Instead, use I and we. So in regards to that, a lot of times when we are fighting or arguing with our partner, we'll say, you do this or you do that, you always are doing this. And that automatically is going to make them feel attacked. They're not even going to be hearing what you're saying. So instead, you can say, I feel hurt when you critique my cooking, or we struggle with communication. We struggle with making time for each other instead of, you never make time for me. You don't know how to communicate. That's not going to go over well. So to really be thinking, to be mindful and think, instead of saying you do this, you do that, because that's going to lead to them feeling attacked. They're not going to be hearing what you're saying. Instead, I feel this, or we struggle with this. So that's something that I think a lot of people, they don't realize. It's such a small thing, but it makes such a big impact. So for number 2, the 3-minute rule. Keep arguments short. The most important information usually comes out in the first 3 minutes. Then take a break, a short walk, and calm down. So I think a lot of couples, they do struggle with this, the 3-minute rule, because they'll go on and on and on and on, and it's just not leading to any resolution. So let's say if you already know you want to talk with your partner about something that's bothering you, it's going to help you to think beforehand. What am I feeling? What am I wanting to convey to them? And what is it that I would need in order to move forward? So when you already do plan those things ahead of time, it's going to be easier to stick to the 3-minute rule. So, just really try to keep arguments short. Like I said, the most important information usually comes out in the first 3 minutes. And if you feel like you still need to talk more about it, you can take a break, a short walk, and calm down. But if you find yourself going in circles or it's just dragging on and on, then you see that, okay, the dynamic that you guys are having and addressing it, it's just not leading to resolution. So not that you have to put a timer on, but to just keep it in mind that, most often it's just a few minutes that the most important information comes out. All right, so number 3, when you are less amped up, feeling sorry will come. Conflict can actually bring us closer by communicating openly. So What this means is that, when you are going to be so heated, you're so in your emotional mind, it's going to be very difficult to even look at things from your partner's perspective, to even see maybe what you could have done differently, to feel remorse, because none of us are perfect. And so, it's going to be important for you, and this is not for them to make you feel better, but for you to get to a place where how can you calm yourself down? That's an individual skill that a lot of us struggle with. We think, oh, well, you made us mad. She made me mad. He made me mad. It's your fault I'm like this. No, when we say that, we're telling the other person, I have no control over my own feelings and my reactions. Is that what you want? You want somebody else to puppet you? Like, that's not. So you have to be responsible. So when you are less amped up, feeling sorry will come. So working on even getting to a place of being able to do that. And the way that conflict can bring us closer by communicating openly is, let's say something hurts my feelings. My husband says something and it hurts my feelings. I can be reactive and say, like, just yell or whatever. But instead, let me think about, okay, what is it that he's saying or doing? What is it triggering in me? And let me share with him, when you said this, when you said this, I felt hurt because when I was young, my mom used to say this, or my dad used to say that, or, so it's where, like, we have to understand what our own triggers are. And when we can share it with our partner, it's going to actually bring you closer, and they can understand, oh, okay, when I say this, even though it's not my intention, she hears it this way. And so it actually can bring you guys closer. It just depends on how you approach the situation. And a lot of couples, they struggle with that. So conflict can actually be an open door to bringing you closer. I see with couples all the time that I see, they were, on opposite ends, all of that. But then when they have a safe space to really talk and to be vulnerable, that's the thing, you have to be willing to be vulnerable, and it's not easy. So I think that that's going to be important to get to that place, but you both have to create that safe space for each other. And that's how therapy, sometimes talking in therapy is, you're going to have a different experience than talking at home, because there is somebody there, somebody who's mediating, you already know coming in, okay, this is going to be a safe space. So it can actually bring you closer depending on how you respond to the conflict. Number 4, you cannot hope to get the most out of your interactions with others until you understand your own emotions, cue into their emotions, and use this knowledge to adjust your approach on the fly. So this is a big one where you have to know, and I'll ask my couples this: do you understand your own emotions? Are you cueing into their emotions? A lot of times people, they don't understand their emotions. They think, oh, well, I'm upset, I'm angry. And I want to let you guys know, anger is actually a secondary feeling. We always feel something first, whether that's fear, hurt, sadness, guilt, shame, whatever other feeling. But the reason it comes off as anger is because we think anger protects us. So let's say, for example, you say something to me and it hurts my feelings. Instead of, me saying, oh, you hurt my feelings, because then I feel vulnerable and at risk of getting hurt again, I get mad. And so I say, who do you think you are? Like, I'll just be reactive. The problem is if you're in that state of anger and you don't understand what's underneath, you're not going to really know what you're feeling. And you can't even express that to the other person. So it's going to be really important for you to understand your own emotions and then cue into their emotions, to really listen with with an open ear, and use this knowledge to adjust your approach on the fly. So just for you guys to know, anger is a secondary feeling. There's always something underneath. Even if it's hard to figure out what that is, to really try to reflect on that, because that's going to help the other person understand, and yourself understand what you want to express here. All right, so number 5, Instead of attacking the other person's character, happy couples color inside the lines and express their own feelings. For example, you would say, I'm furious with you right now, instead of you're despicable or you're a jerk. So I think a lot of couples, they do struggle with this. And just so you guys know, I'm going to be, Afsha is going to be putting this on the website, so you guys will have the tips too. We're just going to go over them now. So what I would want is, for you to express your own feelings. So I'm furious with you right now, instead of you're despicable or you're a jerk. Sometimes we don't realize what we're saying to the other person. We really have to own our own feelings, because it does time and time again. If you're saying you're despicable, you're lazy, you're like this, you're like that, that's going to be chipping away at the relationship constantly. Even if you're saying it in the moment, what is that going to do over time? We have to really be mindful of how we're even talking to our partner, even when we're upset. I'm furious with you right now is going to be received differently than you're such a jerk, or you're good for nothing, or whatever you say. So really, color inside the lines and express your own feelings rather than labeling your partner in a negative way. All right, number 6, don't run from fights and sweep issues under the rug only for them to get bigger later. Unaddressed topics lead to blowups. So I'm sure a lot of you have experienced this before, where maybe you're feeling something negatively, but you just don't really want it to explode. You don't want to make a big deal out of it, so you kind of just brush it under the rug. The issue with this is that it just gets bigger later. You think you're saving yourself the negative feelings of being in the moment and addressing it, but you're really not, because it's just going to get bigger, bigger, and bigger. So this happens in families too, not only in, with couples and in relationships. So you don't want to run from the fights. And that's why it's so important to even learn how to communicate in healthy ways, so that it doesn't have to be a big blow up, even if it's something challenging to talk about. So I think, you can even say to your partner, oh, well, I want to talk about something. When is a good time for us to talk? So they already know ahead of time that, like, you want to talk about something, and you're actually protecting the relationship by bringing it up before it gets into a big thing, because you're saying, I don't want this to blow up over later. I don't want it to be carrying around these feelings for a long time. I want to really address it, because I want to protect and be proactive in our relationship. So sweeping issues under the rug only get bigger later. And I think a lot of us have experienced that. All right, so number 7, start slowly, softly, and respectfully. Harsh startups are hard to process, especially for men. Arguments usually end the same way they begin. For example, there was some noise there.
Sorry, I muted Dr. Brother Altar. So.
Yeah. Take turns, which leads to give and take. Dial it down when things get too emotionally charged. So for you guys to think, when you are bringing up a topic, how are you starting it? Because they usually end the same way they begin. Are you starting it saying, oh my gosh, you're such a jerk, or you're so this, or whatever, like you never do this, you never do that? How do you think that conversation is going to go? It's not going to go well. So to remember, start slowly, softly, and respectfully, because harsh startups are hard to process. Once again, kind of like the first tip we talked about was, saying I or we, because otherwise the person is going to feel attacked. Instead, if you're saying, there's something that's bothering me and I would like to talk to you about it, I feel that's going to have such a different impact and go down a different path if you start a conversation like that, as opposed to attacking the other person. So an example could be, like taking turns, give and take, making sure, okay, let me say my piece, and let me give my partner the space to express themselves too. Sometimes we don't always listen to actually listen. We're just listening to have a rebuttal, and that's not going to lead to resolution. All right, so number 8, no name calling, eye rolling, or biting sarcasm. Contemptuous behaviors are hard to take back and have a corrosive impact on relationships. So I really would want you guys to reflect on yourselves and say, do you do name calling, eye rolling? Are you sarcastic? Because these things, once again, like I said earlier, it was in tip number 5 about, like if you are just berating the other person, that is going to be corrosive to the relationship. It's not even only what we're saying, it's our body language. If your husband or wife is coming to you and expressing their feelings and you're rolling your eyes, what do you think it says to them? It says to them, I don't care about what you're saying. How do you think that is going to go down? It's going to make them feel unimportant, unvalidated. It's not going to make them feel safe and like you really care about hearing what they're saying. So sometimes we really have to be mindful of this, because once again, it chips away at the relationship. And some people who are sarcastic, that's their personality. But really, when we are sarcastic, what it means is that we don't know how to express our feelings in healthy ways. So instead, when you find yourself being sarcastic, to think, okay, wait, what do I really want to say here? So, because otherwise the sarcasm, it's not going to go over well. It's just not going to lead you to a happy, connected, being in a happy, connected, safe relationship. So to be thinking about that. All right, number 9, happy couples know how to cool down on their own. They get a grip on their emotions, get a grip on your emotions, take a time out, and this is a big thing, is sometimes couples, they will take a time out, like if it gets too heated. But the problem is, like, they'll say, oh, well, let's just talk about this later. The problem is they don't end up talking about it later because maybe things smooth over. But what you want to do differently is state a specific time of when you will come back to the issue. For example, 1 hour, at night, the next day. And this is so important because it's saying we're not at a resolution right now, but I still want to hear how you feel. I still want to resolve this. And so let's do it at this time. So let's say you say, okay, let's come back to it in an hour. And this is the person who is less heated is the one who can say, okay, let's come back to this in an hour or at night when we've calmed down. Whoever is less heated, like, they probably are the one who will be in a position where they can say it better. And so let's say if you say, okay, in an hour, 1 hour passes and you still feel so heated, you don't really know yet what's really underneath the anger. And so still come back to it in an hour, but you can say to the other person, you know what, I still need some time to think about this. Let's talk about it at night. So, but you really want to come back to it when you said, even if you're not going to continue to talk about it yet, come back in and check in about it, because it's telling the other person, you know what, we're holding true, like we're sticking to what we're saying, and we really want to give each other the space to talk. So that's things couples, they really struggle with. Sometimes things even blow over in an hour or at night. And the issue with this is that when they blow over and you're like, oh, it's fine, we don't have to talk about it anymore, you still want to come in when you said you were going to check in about it. You still want to come back together and say, you know what, I actually feel I feel okay about it now. I think I was just more emotional in the moment. So still come back and check in during that time. But it could be where there doesn't need to be much conversation about it because you're feeling fine about it. But come back to it, check in, And then you guys can decide if you want to continue or if you need more time. So when you take a time out, I would say, like, don't just take a time out and continue to be angry. Reflect on what did that trigger in me? What's really going on? What's underneath the anger? What do I want to convey to my partner? What would I need to heal that or to repair it? Like, you want to actually do something with that time. You don't just want time to pass. It's what we do with the time that's going to help lead us to resolution. So you can do deep breaths. Deep breaths are so important too. Use self-soothing skills and take breaks. And that's what's going to help lead to resolutions, which, for example, would be agree to disagree. For me and my husband, we are different people. We're different genders, different ages. We come from different family cultures. And so it's where I can't expect him to see things the exact same way I do. He has a different lens on in life than I do. So sometimes the resolution is to agree to disagree. It's not about being right or wrong. It's just, okay, that's his perspective. This is my perspective, and that's okay. So it's hard for people to do that because they want to be right. That's where the issue comes in. All right. So number 10, set ground rules, such as no interrupting. It's not about being right. It's about getting to a common ground and resolving the problem. Don't just listen to your partner to come up with a response. Really listen to the feelings your partner is trying to convey. So you guys would have to come up with ground rules of, okay, when we are handling conflict, what would we need to put in place in regards to rules to feel safe? So no interrupting is, a common one. Maybe, like no eye rolling, like looking at the other person, not being on your phone or on a device. So you really want to do that ahead of time with your partner when you guys are in a calm place, because that's going to just help things go smoother too. And like I said, it's not about being right. It's about getting to a common ground and resolving the problem. And I imagine, and I know I'm not, talking back and forth with people, but like, I imagine some of you do struggle with wanting to be right when it comes to arguments. I would encourage you to think about why is that? Why do I want that? Is it I'm trying to convince myself, really? I want them to say I'm right. That can sometimes lead to just those circles, going around in circles. So really try to listen to what your partner is trying to convey, the feelings that they're expressing. Don't just listen so that you can say something back. And it's hard to do active listening, to practice active listening. It's really hard for a lot of us. So that's going to be important. So yeah, set the ground rules. It might look different for different people. All right, number 11, acknowledge each other's feelings and perspectives. So for example, I know you see it differently than me, but I appreciate you listening to my perspective. This decreases defensiveness and increases productive conversation. Now, who of you talks like that? Probably not a lot. A lot of people, if their partner has a different opinion from them and they're seeing it in a different way, people think, oh, that's wrong because it's not the way I see it. I'm telling you guys, if you want to get to a resolution, even if you feel like your partner is off base on their perspective, if you want to get to a resolution, you have to take the time to step into their shoes and see how they must be feeling. Otherwise, it's going to be hard to be connected. You're going to just be stuck in your way of thinking. They're going to be stuck in their way of thinking. Even if you feel like their perspective is off, that's not the point. The point is that you are trying to see it from their lens, because that's going to lead you to resolution. Otherwise, if you don't do that, you're not going to get there. So acknowledge each other's feelings and perspectives. Even if, let's say, maybe you said something and it hurt the other person. And I see this a lot, not only with couples, but just people in general, where they say, oh, you shouldn't feel hurt. Like, I didn't mean that. When that's not the point. The point is not if you intended to hurt me. The point is that I felt hurt. So even if your intention was different from how your partner received it, you still have to validate their feeling. Like, let's say my, husband says something to me and it hurts my feelings. And I say, oh, I feel hurt that when you said this. And he could say, I didn't mean that. Like, that's not, so that's like, you shouldn't feel hurt. No, that's not how we validate each other's feelings. Instead, he would say, I hear that you feel hurt, and not that it has to be exactly like this. I hear that I hurt you, and I'm sorry that I hurt you. How do you think that conversation is going to go? I'm going to feel validated. If he says, oh, you shouldn't feel hurt, like, that's stupid, like, I didn't even mean that. You're being sensitive. People say that a lot. How do you think the path is going to go in the relationship? So instead, even if it wasn't your intention to hurt the other person, but they still had that feeling, you can still validate. I hear that I hurt you, and I'm sorry that I hurt you. And you can explain, it was not my intention. What I meant was this. But first, you have to validate their feelings. This is going to decrease defensiveness and increase productive conversation. And I really do want you guys to be thinking, and I do this for my own self. So many times I can get annoyed too. You're living with somebody, you're raising kids with somebody, you're going to have differences. But I think, let me take pause before I talk and think, okay, which direction do I want my day to go in or my relationship to go in? If I say this, is it going to go in a positive direction or is it going to go in a negative direction? We don't have to say everything, because you have to think, what's my goal here? The goal is to get to a healthy, loving place in the relationship. So to just know, you don't have to say everything. Of course, if it's something that's still bothering you or it's eating up at you, then say it, but say it in a safe way. Don't just attack or let it out. It's really hard to do this. And that's why so much of the couples work, it's doing individual work, before even being able to get ahead in couples work. So I hope you guys are really thinking and reflecting on your own selves, and what you would, you could work on, because none of us are perfect. All right, so number 12, give each other the benefit of the doubt. Healthy relationships mean people assume their partner is doing the best they can at the moment. Assume that you both have the same goal, which is a mutually beneficial resolution. This makes arguments a team effort and not an adversarial fight. So you have to think, okay, can I give my partner the benefit of the doubt? When maybe my husband said something or did something, am I going to think, oh, he really was trying to hurt me, or am I going to give him the benefit of the doubt? Like, oh, he didn't realize, or he didn't, you really want to feel like, you both have the same goal, because that's going to make a big difference when conflict does come up. Like, our goal, even if there's differences, our goal is we want to raise our kids in a healthy, loving home environment. Okay, if that's our goal, then maybe if you have different ways of approaching it or thinking about it, you have to remember that that's the goal. It is the same goal, and it's going to help you feel more like, okay, let's put our heads together and work on this together. So you want to be able to give each other the benefit of the doubt, even if you have a different perspective or you were hurt or something happened like that. All right, so number 13, this is the last one. Happy couples never forget that they're a team. Even when things are heated, they do not want to do lasting damage. Be a team and protect your future together. So this is really important, in the sense that, yeah, you don't forget you're a team. You know, being in a relationship is very challenging at times. It brings up all of our stuff. And I know in our community, you know, we don't always have the healthiest examples. I know in our culture, you know, we don't always have the healthiest examples of how to handle conflict. A lot of times we're bringing in what we learned from our parents, you know, and that's not the healthiest thing. So to remember, you know, like we are a team here. We're trying to come up with a resolution. People, they focus 100 or, you know, 100% on the problem, and that doesn't get them anywhere. Instead, can you recognize, okay, 5% is on the problem, but let's spend 95% on coming up with a solution because we're a team. This was the problem, but how can we make it work? Let's put our heads together. So that's going to be really important. And, you know, so I go over this with my couples just to give them tips and tools of how they can handle conflict, because it is inevitable. It's inevitable that there's going to be conflict in relationships. Like I said, we're different people, different genders, grew up in different homes. Even if we come from the same culture, we still might have different ways of looking at things, you know, different ages, all of this. And so to know that our partner, we actually have to accept they are a separate entity from us. We are not the same person. So we actually shouldn't expect that they even see things the same way we do. And, you know, and there's positives to that. Maybe you guys balance each other out, you know, like there's positives. It's not just going to be our way. So so I go over this with my couples in sessions, and we talk about what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, what are things they really want to work on, you know, and I tell them, put this on your refrigerator at home, put it on your mirror at home, just as a reminder that, okay, you know what? I want to do it differently because I don't want to be in this position. I want to learn how to handle conflict in a better way. So, you know, it just like having it on your refrigerator or having it just in the forefront of your mind, it makes a difference because you think, okay, wait, this is what our unhealthy dynamic is. It doesn't lead to resolution. So let's try to work on, you know, doing it differently. Maybe I'm going to think, oh, I'm going to start slowly. I'm going to bring up an issue. I'm going to start slowly, softly, and respectfully, because I know even though part of me wants to just attack him, I know what path that's going to go on. And is that where you want to go? And for you guys to remember, for those of you who have children too, our children are watching us. You know, what environment are you putting them in? You know, that's how, even though I think that a lot of times, you know, parents think, oh, well, the kids, they aren't really listening or whatever. They are, even young kids, you know, like they absorb it all. And we want to give them the tools. We really do. Even, and I'll tell you guys, like if I have an argument with my husband on something and, you know, maybe like, you know, our voices get a little bit louder or just more firm, you know, not as like soft and loving. And my kids are there and they're seeing it, you know, and then I will come back to them, you know, not that it gets out of control, but I will come back to them and I will tell them, you know, and I will want to resolve it in front of them too, because we're teaching them how to have conflict resolution. We're modeling it for them, you know, and I'll tell my kids, you know, yeah, sometimes mama and dada, sometimes we have different opinions, or, you know, sometimes we hurt each other. We don't mean to, but it happens. And, you know, you go and you can apologize to them, you know, like you, and to say, oh, well, yeah, this is how I did it wrong. You know, I could have done this differently. Like, it's so important for our kids to also see how to resolve it. How not only, because they're going to get into relationships, most likely, they're going to have conflict. It's inevitable, whether that's with other people or with their partner, their spouse. But I mean, we also want to show that it's possible to get to resolution. So it's even good if you can model that in front of your kids. Of course, it would have to be in an appropriate way. So to keep that in mind too, because sometimes parents, they'll fight in front of their kids, but then they make up behind closed doors, but then the kids don't really learn how to resolve things. So just something to keep in mind for those of you who do have kids. They're watching. They really are. And I know we have a few minutes, but like for you guys to think too, what message am I sending to my partner? What message am I sending to my kids? Like, you only have control over yourself. So for you to think, because some of you might think, oh, well, I'm open to doing these things, but my partner is not, like they're not going to change. Well, you only have control over yourself. So to remember that and to say, am I doing my part? What can I do differently in regards to these tips that we went over? What can I do differently? And hopefully that will change the dynamic. But yeah, it is hard when one person wants to make these changes and the other doesn't. But it is really important to be thinking about what can I do differently, because that's all you have control over. And not to just be focusing on, well, oh, they're the problem or they're this. I have couples come in all the time where in the beginning they say, oh, not that they say it outright, but I can tell they want me to be on their side to try to change the other person. But that's not how it works. Can you accept the person as they are and be willing to look at yourself? Because we all have things that we need to work on. So it's not easy to do that. And that's why some people, they shy away from therapy, because you do have to look at yourself. But it just makes a big difference when you can change your internal world, in a healthy way, because that affects what you're bringing out, And I always say the most important relationship we have is with ourselves, because it sets the foundation for every other relationship. If you're bringing a broken self into a relationship, how do you think that's going to affect your relationship? If you're bringing a whole, loving, healthy person to a relationship, you're going to have a better chance. So to just keep that in mind, and by getting there within your own self, it's going to be much easier to stick to these tips. But it all starts with just you being a healthy, whole individual. And that takes reflecting and, peeling back the layers. It's like we're onions, peeling back the layers and really trying to heal some of those things that we learned, or some things that have happened to us, as children, that we don't look at. So anyway, I know it's going to be time for questions and answers. So I hope that you guys can, just take away some of these tips and try to implement, even just work on one. I know I gave it's 13 tips, but even say, you know what, this month or this week, I'm going to work on one. When I, like the first one, stop saying you, instead use I and we. Okay, I'm just going to focus on one. You don't have to try to be doing everything, It's not like it's easy to just change so quickly, but to keep one in mind and to even say it to your partner, like, you know what, I'm going to work on this. And because by you even expressing it to them, it tells them, I really do care about our relationship. And so I'm going to put an effort. I'm not going to be perfect, but I'm going to put an effort. It tells the other person, this relationship matters to me. So yeah, so I know it's going to be time for questions and answers. I don't know, Aksha, if you have questions on your end, but yeah, hopefully this was helpful for you guys, and you can just continue to, or really work on just learning how to handle conflict. And this is not only with our partners, but also with our kids, with our colleagues, all of that. So.
Yeah, no, thank you, Lubna. I think it's awesome. Those pointers are really good. I do not see any questions in Q&A right now, but it is a lot, right? Because I think, the first thing I once heard was to be in a marriage, the first thing you have to be is interested.
Yes.
People we're so caught up, and I'm going to give this example. When I'm having a conflict, I'm more about the other person is wrong than I am, because I don't see that as a conflict. How can we resolve it more? Because then we are tied into emotions of anger, feeling upset, sad, and all that. So every time when a couple has an argument, it's more about this went wrong because of him, because never this went wrong because of us, or this
Right.
because of this. So we are always focused on sort of putting it on other people in that way.
Right. It's
Um,
easier to point the finger at the other person than to really look at ourselves,
and then I think in the same tone that you said, that we all come from, although we culturally come from the same place, but we have such different experiences.
Mhm.
Be it parenting, be it relationship, we do not have any kind of, it's basically what our parents did, we're going to bring that in.
Yes.
The mom and dad spoke in a certain way, you're going to speak in a certain way. You have the same expectations. If you had a dad who did all of those things, and then you're like, hey, my dad did this for my mom, and I don't know why you can't do it, or even in sometimes, right, being submissive. I've seen a lot of
Mhm.
women in our community have a way of, when I kind of question it, like, oh, I can't do it that way, he's gonna, I'm like, why? Have you even asked him that you could do it or not, but you assume you can't do it because this is what you brought in your home from your experience. So there's a lot of that, right? That, call it baggage, call it that
Yeah.
people don't challenge or ask or change because they're afraid of doing things.
Mhm.
But
Right,
this,
right. Yeah, we have to look at ourselves, that's a really big thing. If you want to learn how to handle conflict in better ways, you have to be saying, "Wait, what am I bringing into this relationship?" It's so easy to point the finger at somebody else, but what am I bringing? If we don't, we're just expecting the other person to change and for them to make us happy, but that's not going to happen. We have to look at ourselves too. And yeah, just in the culture we don't always learn the healthiest ways. Even I know sometimes a lot of people, not only in our culture but just like people in general, they say, like when they were young, if maybe their parents acted a certain way, oh, when I grow up or have kids, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be like this, because you know how terrible it was. But then you end up doing the same thing more often than not. That's the thing. It's so ingrained in us, we don't always realize.
yeah,
So yeah, so to keep that in mind too.
there's a question here which says, I have the my way or highway attitude. And if things go against what I imagine the scenario to be, it makes me frustrated. Also, when I'm stressed out, I start yelling. How can I resolve it?
Hmm. Yeah. So I mean, it sounds like there's some need for control there. Like if you feel like it has to be my way, how do you think that's going to affect the relationship? That's not being a team, you know? So I think that in that regard, it is going to come down to doing some like individual work, whether that's in therapy or not, but just understanding, okay, where is this need from control coming from? Why is it that I feel like it has to be my way, Where did I learn that, or where is it coming from? And for you to know, okay, what is more important? Is it that, oh, it's going to be my way, or my relationship, I want it to be a team? You really have to look at that and take pause and think about that. So I mean, I think there's like probably deeper layers that you would have to um, identify in order to understand where this is coming from. So let's say even for you, if you have this need, oh, like my husband is wanting it to be different than how I want it. Recognize, if you can take pause, maybe you want to say, oh no, we were going to do it this way. Instead, can you take pause and even just inquire, what's your perspective? Help me understand. Even if you think your way is right, can you at least do that? Because how do you think it's going to make your partner feel if you're just saying it has to be my way? Is that a partnership? It's not. So I think it does come down to also like, I mean, it sounds like there's some control there, some issues with control, and that's something to explore
And
because
that's such an important thing. The control part, it's such a big thing in relationship, right?
yes, power and control.
Power and control is such a big thing in terms of figuring out why control. Most often, if you see it from a control person, it's usually because they're afraid that things will go wrong, because there's also fear and lack of trust, right?
Right.
Because say if it's a wife or a husband making a suggestion, you want to do it your way because you don't trust your wife or your husband to kind of have made. So really, I think not giving them the opportunity. And there's always that over functioning and under functioning, right? Because one, you want control, one, you're also over functioning because you think if I give it to him or her, they're not gonna, or a partner, and they're not gonna do the right thing. So I think sometimes really kind of talking about that trust,
Yes.
working on what trust means, what that works in the relationship. And then frustration, right? I often say when people are frustrated, anger is an okay reaction. It's a normal reaction.
Yeah.
What you do with your anger is all
Right.
you.
Right.
People,
You can't put it on the other person.
nobody makes you mad. People are allowed to make you mad, but what are you doing with your anger is always a
Right.
question.
We have control over that. We can't say, oh, well, I yelled because of you, you know? No, yes, you upset. I felt upset by what you were saying, but yeah, you have to have control. Otherwise, you're saying to the other person, you control me.
Right.
I don't have control over my emotions and my actions, you know? Um, so to really, yeah, be looking at yourself there, which it's not easy. It's so hard for people to do that.
And again, that also brings us to a very hard topic of abuse, right? Um, it is, I mean, I've worked in prison systems, I've worked in places, abuse is everywhere. Every culture, it does not escape socioeconomic status, rich, poor. There's abuse everywhere. One out of three women are getting abused. It's
And
a
different types of abuse too, right? Emotional, verbal, physical,
yep.
sexual, like there's all different types of abuse.
And often sometimes in our community culture, I've seen, oh, so and so wasn't listening to her husband, that's why it's almost like justified. And that kind of brings us to this control, anger, trust things. What does it mean? Yes, if you're angry at your partner, but does it, whatever you react and however you react is your responsibility, not anybody else.
Right. Right. We can't just blame the other person for our actions. We have to get to a place where, we can't control how we feel. We can't control our feelings. Like, don't even try to control your feelings. Just hear your feelings, identify them, validate them. But we can control how we respond to the feelings.
The response is the work that needs to happen. If we get angry and
Right.
yell, only coping strategy, I call it a coping strategy, but it's a bad coping strategy. And how can we replace it with better coping strategies? What if I took a walk? What if I got out and then sort of reflect and said, wait, let's go back to point zero and see what started this conversation or this argument and conflict, and how did I react? Can I go back and sit with my partner and say, hey, you know what, we started off talking about this, this is where we were yelling and screaming at, was that way healthy, not healthy, and how can we replace? And keep working on it again and again, because it's practicing, right?
Oh, it's practice and nobody's perfect.
Nobody
But
is.
what I see that makes a difference in couples is that when they see the other person putting in effort, it makes your partner feel loved and like the relationship matters. If you're not putting in effort, then it's going to make your partner feel like, oh, they just don't care. So putting in that effort, and I'm telling you, all of you, like, a lot of us in our culture, like, we don't learn healthy ways of handling conflict. We don't even learn healthy ways of how to do feelings. How do we even respond to our feelings? And we're seeing, and I'm sure obviously, Afsha, you're seeing so many children too who are struggling with mental illness and emotional issues. I'm seeing them too. And it's like a lot of it is coming from like not knowing how to cope with feelings in healthy ways. If we can set our kids up in doing that, if we can set our kids up, I know we're talking about couples today, like if we can model for our kids just how to even have a healthy, loving partnership, in our own marriage, they're going to have a different experience. They're going to have a positive. We're setting them up. By us investing in ourselves, investing in our relationship, we are setting them up for giving them tools, modeling it for them so that they can have a different experience.
Right? The key word is investing. We're so
Right.
good at
Investing. I see it all the time. You're going to get the biggest return on your investment,
yeah.
whether you have kids or not. You're going to have the biggest return on your investment when you invest in yourself, your own internal work, and in your relationship. It colors everything else in life. And so I think, yeah, it's not easy to do that. But if you want to give your kids a chance, I used to think that kids were privileged if they, like their parents were financially stable and they had food, or, like had all these opportunities, traveled all over, all these experiences. I used to think that's how I defined privileged kids. Now, no. Now I feel like you are a privileged child if your parents, if your family, your home is loving, safe, secure, healthy. You have a healthy model of how to do feelings. Your parents are emotionally healthy and well. I feel like, to me, that's how I define privileged children now. It's not about all these other things, that people might think. So, and that starts within our own selves. So
There's another question which says, I cannot stop comparing my husband to my father and his family to my family, and it's not healthy, but I can't help it. How can I stop this? I feel I'm an idealist. I want everything perfect.
yeah. Well, so, okay. I mean, that comes down to, as well, like, you're focusing so much on what your husband isn't doing, and I imagine that takes away from you thinking about what he is doing. It sounds like your dad really, wasn't a exemplary father and person, at the same time, when you are comparing, you have to remember, my husband is a different person. What are his strengths? Like, have you sat down and thought about what are his strengths? And of course, I'm sure he has things to work on. And you can talk about in a healthy way, you can sit down, use some of these tips and say, I really would appreciate if, you were able to do this, or this is what it would mean to me, or this is why it is important to me. Not that he's going to necessarily do it, but at least you're expressing your feelings in a healthy way. But the thing is, like, with comparing, it's just, there's a Buddhist saying that the comparing mind is a suffering mind. Whenever we're comparing ourselves to others, other people to others, it's not gonna bode well. So to really just be thinking about, okay, what are his strengths? What are his positives? Even whenever you guys do talk about something negative, if you're like critiquing your partner on something, how many positive things are you saying? There's I don't know if you guys have heard of the Gottman Institute. uh, this couple, they do a lot of research on couples, and they say a happy couple, they have a 5-to-1 ratio of positive sentiment override, meaning there's 5 positive things that they say or do to 1 negative thing. That's what makes a happy couple. What are you saying? Are you saying positive things, or are you just saying negative things about your partner? You're focusing on the negative things that your husband is doing compared to your dad. To be thinking about that. How is that going to make him feel? How is that going to, what tone and energy is that going to put in the relationship? So I think, yeah, to be thinking too, wait, what are the positives here? I hope there's some. If there are not, then that's something you guys really have to talk about. But yeah, just having this idealized image of your dad and putting that on your husband, is that really fair? He's his own person, and hopefully he has some strengths. Maybe you're just overlooking them. But I mean, I would love to like go more in depth about like these questions, but it is like such a personal thing that I would have to know more individually in order to help address that. But that's something I would say too, to be thinking 5-to-1 positive sentiment override. When we're comparing, we're thinking about the negatives, but where is that going to lead you? It's going to lead you in a negative direction. So
That's awesome. That's awesome, Libna. You've covered a lot of keywords, key things to talk about and hear in a short time, in a way. And I think as we go through, you really have to kind of do the work, and that's the best investment, is do the work for yourself and figure out what it is.
yeah, it all starts within yourself.
And I think people wanting to participate and wanting to kind of ask these questions are already on the right direction, in a way, to say, hey,
Oh
I
yeah.
want this relationship, and how do we? And it's work in progress all your life, because you're changing, the world around you is changing. uh,
Mhm.
so with kids and everything, so relationship is something that you keep continue to work on constantly.
Yes, yes. And it's hard being in a relationship. It's hard being a human being. We're so complex, you know. But it is where like it can be healing. Being in relationships can be healing. It just depends on how are you approaching the conflict? How are you approaching the challenges? You know, but you really have to have that whole healthy mindset to respond to life differently, you know, to respond to the challenges differently. And like I said, yeah, just it starts within. So
Yeah, there's another question saying, just on the second question for the same person is, I'm so conscious of what my kids say in front of everyone and what my husband says. I mean, I'm more conscious of other people rather than the feelings of my family. And my kids often say I'm nice to others, but not to them.
mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think that that's like, I think it's good that you're recognizing it and you have that insight and to think, how do I feel about that? You know, where is that coming from? Why do I care more about other people's feelings than my own family's? You know, am I looking for validation externally? You know, maybe there's some of that that's going on. Um, you know, I mean, you want your family to be the ones who are priority, you know, their feelings. But why isn't it? So that's something I think to reflect on yourself. It sounds like maybe there's some need for validation from others. You're getting it there, and it's harder uh, to focus on your home. So to be thinking like, okay, my kids are saying this to me, even though it's not a positive thing, let me hear it and let me think, is this how I want to be? And I would imagine it's not. That's why you're bringing it up. So, but I would think, okay, do I need other people's validation um, to validate me? You know, and is that the healthiest thing? It's not.
Yeah, no, definitely. Thank you very much again. I know we're running a little over time, but
Yeah.
we'll put those things that you have on
Yeah.
the website, and then we'll have you come back again, inshallah, and talk to us a little more about these kind of things.
Yeah, yeah. I'm so glad to, you know, that you guys are putting this on and to be able to participate and contribute in some way. And like I said, we can do it differently. You know, we can change the next generation. It really starts within us. And if you invest in yourself, then you are going to get the highest return on your investment. You know, people talk about ROI these days. You're going to get the highest return on your investment if you invest on yourself personally, internally, in your relationship. You know, you're just going to see it. So that's where you want to put your energy. Even though it's hard, it's going to give you the most benefits. So
Awesome. Thank you, Lubna.
of
Thank
course. Yeah. Well, yeah, so good to be a part of this. And yeah, if you guys have any questions, I'm sure my information is out there. You know, you can contact me too. So,
you. Thank you, Assalamualaikum.
okay, Islam.